When we think of wildlife conservation, most of us imagine a big green forest neatly fenced off from people with tigers, elephants living happily ever after. But in the real world, forests don't come with borders. They bleed into farms, villages, tea plantations, and highways. And that's where the real conservation story begins, where people and wildlife are forced to share space, sometimes peacefully, sometimes not. Today, we are joined by someone who knows this landscape scale challenge better than most, Dr. Divya Vasudev, an ecologist and co founder of conservation initiatives. She works at the cutting edge of science and action, finding ways for species like elephants and gibbons to survive and for people to thrive at the same time. Dr. Vasudev, thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ananya, for that very kind introduction. Like Ananya said, I work in Northeast India, actually, in very exciting landscapes where people and animals live close together. And I'd like to share some of our findings and our thoughts with all of you. Can I have my presentation up, please? Thank you. Yeah, so today what I'm going to talk to you about is how we go about conserving wildlife and ecosystems in what are quite complex landscapes. But before I get into that, a little bit about our motivation behind this. Where we stand now, we could go in two directions going into the future. We could either conserve nature, in which case we secure the lives and livelihoods of about 500 million people at least who are directly dependent on nature. There is produce that we all use, which is from the forest. There are innumerable species, some of which I'll talk about today. And there are very strong links that we have with nature. All of us walk in the forest and say, ah, peace at last. On the other hand, we could lose all of that. Half of India is already water stressed. We already face heat waves. We already face extreme climate. We are already looking at imminent species extinctions. Where we do work, for instance, there are places that I go to, and those places have seen species extinctions, local extinctions of species in the last 10 to 20 years. And of course, there are very, very high costs of conflict, which also I'll talk about in a little bit. All of these directly lead us to the point that we really should think a little bit more about our forests and our wildlife. And in India, especially, we should, because, well, we are a land of really rich natural biodiversity, and we should be proud of the fact. The Northeast, especially, is extremely rich for those of you who have been there. It's beautiful for those of you who have not. You definitely should come. India is one of 20 mega diverse countries. It's got multiple biodiversity hotspots. It's got many, many species. There is also very, very strong people-nature relationships in India. You never really have to ask, why do we need to conserve wildlife? People already know and understand and appreciate that we have to do so. And like I said, there are a lot of people who are directly dependent on forests. But we are losing forests on a day-to-day basis. We are diverting forests. That is, we are declassifying forests on a day-to-day basis. In the last 2 decades, you can estimate that about 16,000 square kilometers of forest is lost, but that is likely an underestimate. Northeast India, which has less area that is under strict protection and which is facing very rapid change in the last decade or so and is going to face even more change in the decades to come, is very, very much affected. And so that is a place that I'm going to take you to. Just a couple of things that I just want to mention that I'm going to talk about. One is this link between science and conservation. So I am a scientist. My interest is to go out and understand where species are, why they are in a place, where they move, where the corridor should be. But I want that to link to conservation, and I want that to have an impact on ground. And that is the kind of work that we try to do. We also work at the scale of large landscapes. So like Ananya said, there are the forests, but there's also the space outside the forest where animals move, where people get benefits, and so on and so forth. And because of this, at the center of it really are human, wildlife, and people-nature relationships. And a species that exemplifies all of this is a species that all of you must be very familiar with, the Asian elephant. This is a species that travels, an animal that travels large distances, hundreds and hundreds of kilometers, form the range of the species. They require large spaces, they require a lot of food, and so conservation for the species cannot be at small scales. It has to be at large scales. The species is also one which has a very close place in our heart for religious reasons and for other reasons as well. And this is true across India. In the Northeast, for instance, where we work, in tea estates, people refer to elephants as Baba, which means father. In Garo Hills, which is in Meghalaya, people refer to elephants as Mongma, which means mother. So there's this very close tie with elephants, yet at the same time, we also come into conflict with elephants. So the cost of human elephant conflict in India is estimated to be approximately 1 million hectares of crop loss. And which is vulnerable to crop loss as well. We lose on a yearly basis about 500 human lives and about 100 elephant lives. And so this is something that is impacting both elephants as well as people. And you can have, even in the same place, you can have both the positive interactions that you saw in the previous slide, where people are watching elephants with interest, with awe, and the negative interactions where people are losing crops and sometimes even getting injured or facing safety risks from elephants. We have a policy to deal with this way back in 2010. There was an elephant task force report that came up, which emphasized this fact that we need to think about conservation at the scale of large landscapes, and spoke to the fact that there are protected areas, there are areas outside the protected areas, and there are corridors that link these protected areas. Hence, we have 33 elephant reserves in our country. These elephant reserves not only have protected areas, but they encompass the areas outside. They encompass corridors, and these corridors are extremely important and not sufficiently protected or understood. About 80,000 square kilometers of area is under these landscapes, these elephant reserves, but about 25% of them are protected. And we need a really good plan for the rest of the area. And that is where we are trying to come in, and we are trying to provide solutions. So I'd like to take you now to the Northeast, to what might be one of the most iconic parts of the Northeast, which is the river Brahmaputra. All of you might have heard about the river. This is a mighty river, extremely wide, fascinating, majestic to see. And at the lower southern banks of the Brahmaputra is what you see over here, a national park called Kaziranga. Kaziranga is a tiger reserve. It is a national park, and it's part of the Kaziranga Karbi Anglong Elephant Reserve, along with all of the forests that you see to the south of the park. And Kaziranga is really, really special because it is what you call an alluvial floodplain ecosystem, which means that every year, let me come to that, but basically Kaziranga is very rich. It's extremely rich. You don't have a place like that in India. It's got multiple species of deer. It's got one of the highest tiger densities across the species range. It's home to the second largest elephant population, Asian elephant population across its range. It's got the majority of one-horned rhinos. So you can see that it's a pretty special place. And what makes it really special is that every year when the monsoon season comes, and we are now at sort of the waning end of the monsoon season, the Brahmaputra gets so much rain that it floods over. And when it floods over, it can inundate up to 90 to 95% of the park. Which means that 90 to 95% of the park can be underwater. And this means that elephants, elephants, rhinos, deer, all of these animals, as you can see, have to move. And this they are naturally adapted to do. The problem is that where earlier there was a clear space for them to go south of Kaziranga and up towards the highlands and the highland forests, which are free of this flood, the flooding effect. They now have to pass through reasonably heavily inhabited human areas. So these may be tea plantations, it may be paddy fields. There is a highway that cuts across this entire stretch. There are human habitations, and this can cause mortality. There are reports on a yearly basis that come up. But I would like to say that this flooding is also what keeps Kaziranga rich, because the flooding brings out the rich silt that then causes grasses to grow and the herbivores to thrive. So the first thing we really wanted to do is to say, where do these animals move? Which are the parts? So all of what you see in light green is Kaziranga over there. The area between Kaziranga and the highlands is covered by the grid network, the orange to yellow to orange to maroon grid network that you see. And that entire area is inhabited by people. There are, like I said, there are tea estates, paddy fields over there. So we wanted to know, where do the elephants go, or where do all animals move in the dry season when there is no flood? And where do they move in the wet season when there is flood? And to do that, we walked that entire stretch. We used some statistical models to make sense of our data. And we were able to map out the locations which are really important for elephant movement, both during the dry season as well as during this really critical monsoon season. Um, you can see the two maps here, and the monsoon map has more blue, which means more water. What we were also able to do is we were able to see that elephants and other animals during the dry season chose certain areas and were a little bit more picky. And during the wet season, they were running away from water and they were a lot less picky, as you can imagine. What we also realized is that tea estates, which is a large landholding area, some of you might have been to Munnar, for instance. You might have seen large areas covered by tea. It's the same thing over here. There are large landholdings which are tea, and elephants use these areas because they are at a slightly higher elevation. The thing about tea is also that elephants don't consume tea, they don't eat tea. So there isn't any financial loss as such when elephants walk through tea on a regular basis. But there is another side of the issue. Elephants are walking through tea, but there are people working in these tea estates, right? So we wanted to know, okay, what do the people think? So we went to about 2,200 people and asked them a bunch of different questions to find out, okay, what do you think about elephants being over here? What do you think about elephants living in Assam, in Kaziranga, in your tea estate? And what you can see in this graph are some of the results. As you move to the teal area, it's people being a little bit more positive towards elephants and being happy with elephants there. As you move towards the more olive green color, then it's people facing or voicing some concerns about elephants. Everybody thought that elephants had an intrinsic right to be in that area. This land belongs to elephants, it belongs to us as well. That was a thought that uh, permeated across the population that we spoke to. The concern came not so much from financial loss, but from a safety risk. Elephants were thought to restrict use to some extent, but most importantly, there were sudden encounters that people had with elephants, and these sudden encounters could lead to people's death or it could lead to injury as well. And obviously, this is a very, very serious concern that we had to take into consideration. So there were a few things that we did. One thing that we realized in talking to people a little bit more is that many of these sudden encounters happened at night and near people's residences. People who lived or worked on tea estates stay in these clusters of homes called labor lines. These labor lines often don't have light. So elephants can come out in the dark, and in some locations, people come out in the dark and they may come face to face with elephants with tragic consequences. So we had a very simple solution. We very strategically looked for points that were on elephant routes, but where also people stayed, and put up solar powered electric streetlights in those points. We specifically told the people that we cannot put lights all over the place. Elephants are diurnal, they will not care if there are lights all over the place. The idea is to link the lights with where people are so that elephants, intelligent beings as they are, will say, hey, okay, there are people over there, let's choose another location or another path that's slightly dark. So we also ensured that there were dark passages that the elephants were able to move through. We extensively also spoke to people to tell them this is our aim, and to figure out ways collaboratively with them whereby elephants could also use the space and people could also be safe. And we followed elephants in tea estates. We continue to do that till today to see exactly when things go right and when things go wrong. So when an elephant passing through a tea estate can turn into conflict. The other thing that we realized when we were talking to people and when we were doing our surveys is that in these areas, sometimes people stored their grain in their houses. When they did so, elephants sometimes smelt the grain and came to people's houses, broke the houses, and sometimes even caused injury and death. Now, this, of course, is a really, really serious issue because there is a heightened safety risk in your own home. So we went to some of the most vulnerable families who are facing this problem, and we spoke to them to build what was a community-based elephant-proof granary. So this was on stilts. What you see over here is the finished product. This is on stilts. Multiple people in the village, multiple families could use the granary, and each had their own compartments. It is in an area that people could see and could protect, but at the same time was not in their homes. So we were able to shift the risk of injury and death from people's homes, which we thought was really important. It also led to food security because this sometimes was the entire year's supply of grain for these families. So that is something that we have just started. We put up camera traps, which are remotely triggered cameras at these granaries to see whether elephants come or not. Till now, they have not come. And we have plans to roll it out to further villages in the coming years. What we also realize, though, is that just as young boys in cities and towns do dangerous things, in the tea estates as well, these youth who are of teenage years or just past teenage years were doing silly, dangerous things. And they would chase elephants, tease elephants, sometimes go very close to elephants. Let me not say any more and give any ideas, but they basically caused the elephants to be stressed. And what we noticed is that, well, they could run away from elephants because they were agile, but the elephants were then stressed out, and that put other people at risk, people who might be older, women who might be quite young. So they were also put at risk. So we needed a strategy to get these kids who were otherwise supposed to be in school, who were bunking school and coming and chasing us. We needed a strategy to kind of like to change this behavior, to discourage them from teasing elephants and chasing elephants. So what we did was we partnered with Cincinnati Zoo and Game Design Plus to build a mobile phone game, because everybody uses mobile phones now. Everybody plays games now. And this game is called Harmony, or Heroes of Elephantia. The idea is that there are elephants and there are these evil spirits that might try and harm elephants. And the protagonist of the game needs to protect the elephants. So we've rolled this out in multiple schools in the landscape. We have reached more than 1,000 students and have had them play games. We have rolled it out in local tournaments as well, cricket tournaments, for instance. We combine it in schools with other awareness initiatives, for instance, role play exercises that our team does with the students, to teach them what you should do when there are elephants nearby and what you shouldn't do when there are elephants nearby, to really bring home what the risks are when you go too close to elephants, when you play with fire, and to also bring about and instill a sense of protection for these animals. Very importantly, the sense of empathy, we think, is already there. And all that we're doing is trying to bring it to the fore and strengthen it a little bit. And like I said, our aim is to make sure that science is backing us all the way. So currently what we're also doing is to see whether this game actually does have an effect, whether it has an effect on people's knowledge of elephants, whether it has an effect on their attitudes and on their intentions. And over the years, maybe 2 years, 5 years from now, whether there is an effect that is seen on the behavior of youth as well. So having said that about elephants, I'd like to take you to a slightly different sort of context and a slightly different scenario, and talk about a completely different species, and a species that all of us should really know about, but surprisingly many people in India don't. We all know about chimpanzees and gorillas in Africa. These are like the great apes, orangutans in Southeast Asia, but India has its ape too. And this is the western hoolock gibbon. It's only found in India, it's only found in Northeast India. It's also found in Bangladesh and parts of Myanmar. And it is an extremely special species, not just because it's a wild ape. It's a creature of the trees. It's only found up in the high canopies. As you can see over here, what you're looking at is the male hoolock gibbon. Like us, it's found in monogamous families. So gibbon groups are adult males, adult females, and they're young. And as soon as the young grow old, they leave their groups and form their own territory. They're highly endangered because of forest loss. It's estimated that there's a 90% decline in gibbon populations. To put that in perspective, we have lost 9 out of 10 gibbons in the last few decades. And that is pretty huge. The other really special thing about gibbons and gibbon inhabited forests is the songs of the forest. Gibbons make a very special call. It's called a duet. The call is made by the adults. It's sort of a contact call with each other, but also it's a territory call. It's a call that says, This is where I am. Let's hear it. Thank you. So I did my PhD on gibbons, and there was nothing better than to wake up early in the morning to the sound of gibbons. I have stood under a tree with gibbon calls reverberating through my body, and that is just an amazing sense. But these are some of the forests where gibbons are found, and you can stand on the plateau tops, and the valley just reverberates with the call of the gibbons, and it echoes through because being a territorial call, one group responds to another. There's also something else which is very interesting about these forests, which is that in the hill tracts of Northeast India, a large proportion of the forests are community owned and managed. And by large proportion, I mean up to 90%. So most of the forests are owned, managed by communities. In some cases, communities manage them well, in some cases, not so well. But whatever it is, the mode of conservation in this area has to be in collaboration, in partnership, and completely taken over and empowered by communities. And it turns out that these forests have multiple species, such as the gibbons that you're seeing over there, cats like the Asiatic golden cat, it has leopard cats as well. There are multiple deer species, there's serow, there's barking deer. All of these species are found, though in slightly low density, these species are found in these forests. And how do we know? We know because we have worked with the community to do what we call biomonitoring. So you remember the call of the gibbon? Well, it turns out that you can monitor forests and find out which forest has gibbons, which forests don't have gibbons using the call. So we go to these hills, we climb up the hills, climb up the trees, and put up what is called put up audio recorders. In a method called passive acoustic monitoring, these audio recorders record through the day, and they catch the call of the gibbon. And when you look at it in a spectrogram, you see something like the figure that you're seeing down here. And you can see these very sharp orange blips. Those blips are the call of the gibbon. So you can hear them. We have now automatic models to detect these calls. And then we listen to them and manually validate and say, yeah, these are gibbon calls. That works for gibbons. It doesn't work for all species. So for other species, cats, deer, we put up camera traps. These are also along with people. Camera traps, like I said, are remotely triggered cameras that you can strategically place in forests. When an animal moves past, it triggers off the camera. We get the photos. We see what animals they are. We have done this across about 2,000 square kilometers of community forests. We do this in collaboration with the communities, with the local communities who live over there. We train them as well, such that they can also, going into the future, do such work. The other thing which is really, really important in these areas is that the links between people and nature are extremely strong. Nagaland, for instance, which is one of the places where we work, the government estimates that it has one of the highest, or FSI estimates it has one of the highest per capita uses of firewood across the country. A lot of these areas are very remote. The food that you get comes from the forest to a large extent. So we have also spoken to people to understand what they think is the most important benefit and the most important value that they're getting from forests. And these include things like water, benefit to the soil, improved agriculture, and relational values, just a sense of the fact that, yeah, my land has always had forests and should continue to have forests going into the future. But there are more tangible benefits as well. Soon after COVID, we all know that all of us were affected by COVID, as were these communities which were far off in these areas. And one of the things that we found was that while everybody was impacted especially by the lockdowns, by the market shutdowns, so there was a shortage of food which came to many of these locations. So many families faced food limitations and food insecurity. But families that had land that they could fall back on for agriculture were able to supplement their diet with this land that they sourced from, with this food that they sourced from the land. So this provided community resilience, a little bit of food security, and they didn't face as much food limitation as did families that didn't have land where they could do agriculture. And this usually is slash and burn shifting agriculture, which is a form of nomadic agriculture practiced in these hilly areas. So there is a lesson over there for community resilience, and there is a lesson over there for how conservation, land management, and community governance can come together in a very nice way for everybody's benefit. What do we do with this information? So we know that there are forests, we know that there are animals, we know that these animals face threats. They face threats from hunting, the forests face threats of clearance. And we know that people value the forest a lot. So we go back to the village with this information, we go back to community leaders, we go back to children, we go back to the general public, everybody who lives in the village, and we provide them with this information, we provide them with this perspective, and we support them in whatever way possible when they, for them to secure forests in their land such that they can get clean water, such that they can get forage, and such that they can get firewood and other benefits. We support them and encourage them to have village level policies that stop hunting, for instance. And we support them in various other ways, like, for instance, nature friendly livelihoods, such as gibbon centric tourism, for example. But tying all of this together really are animals like the western hoolock gibbon. So I'd like to take you now to a location where we work. This is a place called Himamalay Sohmat. It is near Mausanram, which some of you might have heard as one of the rainiest places in the world. And that's very true. Rains a lot, and during the monsoon season, rains every day. These rain-drenched forests have gibbons, and they have other species as well. And gibbons have been entrenched into the stories that people have. So the people living over here are of the Khasi tribe. And when we went over there, and in some of the earliest conversations, an old man who was like one of the community leaders and one of the respected old men of the village was telling us about their folktale and their thoughts, that their saying, I guess, which said that as far as they could hear gibbon calls, that's as far as their lands, the lands of their Hima, lie. And that basically really brought home to us how entrenched gibbons are in their very identity. This thought of gibbons and conservation goes into the future as well. And what you're seeing over here is a drawing from one of our awareness programs in Meghalaya as well. And children of the future, children who are going to be conservation leaders of the future, also recognize that if there are forests, there are going to be gibbons, and there's going to be water. If there aren't forests, as we cut the forests, the gibbons also lose out, but we also lose out because we lose things like water, firewood, and henceforth. I'd also like to, you've heard from me, but I'd also like to bring to you a voice from this same area, from Himamalay Sohmat, Hima, or a land which has taken the effort to secure their forests and secure their gibbons. And so can I have can you please put the video?
Sarong sisaba ni nakanika sinong nakanika hima kejong teng ya don uni umrat ba kerpang ba ula jan ujat yang kapathe te long ngaya wer lang ya pi kum prasam laru bangin tang ya long inya penek pensa uni umrat long inya sumar ki klau ki bitap ki badon hakane jaka kejong kenang bakine ki umrat ki nom du ujat ya kidang don kidang sa hakane jaka kejong bat banginang yo ban ya sumar bat kenang bangin yo pen iro ka partai bangi kum kre trai snong trai jaka jokan ne kai malai sumar ngindang ya don yo uni umrat.
You just heard from Banshin, who is from Himamalay Sohmat and who's been working with us now for, can I have my presentation back up, please? Who has been working with us now for a few years, and he now leads programs. He does the awareness programs, and he encourages conservation and pushes for conservation efforts on his lands. And I hope that with this little talk, I encourage some of you to also do conservation on your lands. Just to say that if you want to know more about us and our work, our website is up there. We are also on Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to know anything else about the work that we do or anything that I said, feel free to email me. My email address is there as well. Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. Vasudev, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. I have to say that some of the measures that you and your team have been taking care of in the world of conservation are very unique and interesting. And through this presentation, I hope, if not all, some of us have understood that if anything, we are the encroachers. So we need to learn how to coexist. Just I have a couple of questions as we proceed with this. It's very interesting that your area of work is specific to Northeast, which we actually know very little about, even the Indians. So, could you tell us if you faced any challenge that's unique to this specific region?
Thanks, Ananya. That's a very. So I myself am actually from the south. There are multiple people on our team who are from the northeast, but I'm from Chennai. I went to Assam, so I started my work in the northeast in Assam, in Manas in 2007, 2007, and since then I've worked in Assam, Meghalaya, and Nagaland, and now I can speak. I can say that I can speak fluent-ish, well, conversable Assamese. What drew me? Let me say the positives and the sort of maybe like the challenges which might be unique to there. What drew me to the Northeast really is that it is one of the two biodiverse, very intensely biodiverse places in India. So there's the Western Ghats and there's Northeast India. The species that you get over there are innumerable, and a lot of them have not yet been described. The difference between the two places is that the Western Ghats still has a little bit more focus, a little bit more research, a little bit more of the advances that conservation science in India has seen, but the Northeast has not. So I co-founded conservation initiatives with my colleague Dr. Varun Goswami, and the two of us felt that the Northeast should have the same sort of conservation excellence that is seen in the South as well. There should be high quality conservation science that happens. There should be the link to conservation practice. There has to be opportunities for aspiring conservationists to enter organizations and to build their skills and to build for their professional growth. And that's why we started conservation initiatives. There are also some really exciting places to go to, like phenomenal landscapes, places where it's unbelievable, just the beauty of the landscape and also the sense of adventure, because very few people have gone over there from other parts of India. But all of that also means that there are challenges in that there's not as much work over there as there has been in the rest of India, or in the Western Ghats at least. So wherever we go, there is data scarcity. So even if just simple things that we've done, just going and looking at these forests and saying, what are the species that are there? That's information that we should know, right? We should know what is there in all of our forests. We don't have that information as yet. Like in some of the places where we have gone and done awareness programs, we are the first ones who have gone and done awareness programs over there. But there are very, very advanced programs in many other places. So, I would like to say that some of the roads that we've gone on, let me just say, it requires four-wheel drive and it requires some driving skills. So there's adventure and there's adventure. So those have been the challenges. There are also some unique situations. I just like to say it like that, which, for instance, like I said, a large proportion of the hill tracts are community owned and managed. Hunting is still a big threat to wildlife over there. So a lot of what we do is to try and encourage people to stop hunting and basically discourage people from hunting and encourage village leaders to stop hunting from happening. Those kind of threats are maybe a little bit less in some other parts of India, but are pretty high over there.
Right. Dr. Vasudev, I would like to share a small anecdote, if you would allow me. Just today, I was speaking with a friend who recently returned from a trip to Masai Mara, which is in Kenya. And for just context for our viewers, this June, July, August is like the peak time for tourists to visit the wildlife there, because the animals migrate through the Mara River and it's a sight to behold. But because of the excessive number of cars around the crossing, the animals refused to follow their natural instinct and remained in the jungle. Now, the reason I bring this up is because tourism, rather over tourism, is not unique to Masai Mara. And northeastern India, as little we know about this region, it is gaining a lot of traction among the tourists. Do you think this is a threat that could come tomorrow to this region?
I think that in some places it already is a threat, because the issue is when you have more tourism than you can handle and more tourism than you can regulate. So tourism is a double-edged sword. It can bring a lot of awareness, it can bring a lot of appreciation, and of course it can be a green livelihood, nature-friendly livelihood to a particular area. But if you're not able to control it, and if you're not able to direct it to be conscious, nature conscious tourism, then it obviously doesn't, it doesn't serve that purpose. And I'd like to give an example actually, of one of the things that we're doing, which I hadn't spoken about. But so Cherrapunji is a place that everybody knows, or maybe many people might know. It was one of the rainiest places in the world. It has these steep cliff faces, beautiful waterfalls, very pretty, very accessible from Shillong. So a lot of people go there, and it is now facing the crunch of that tourism. And people who are living in that area and around the area are facing the crunch of tourism, because along with tourism comes litter, a lot of traffic, and so on and so forth. So where we work, the place that I was talking about, Himamalaya Somat, they want to have gibbon-centric tourism as well. But they have been very clear from the beginning that they don't want a model like Cherrapunji. They want a model where people who understand the work that they're doing, who appreciate nature, and who want to be at one with nature, but not mess up nature, leave footprints and nothing else, basically. They want those kind of tourists to come. And even if there are fewer tourists, they want more appreciative tourists to come. So that, I think that while we can't control, maybe we can't control like some places, definitely that is the kind of tourism that we should push for, where people go to a place and come back with a deeper appreciation of the place, not just with photos or with a trail of empty Lay's packets, but with a deeper appreciation, a deeper understanding of the location. And it's a really good point that you brought up.
Yep, that's the hope. All right, Dr. Vasudev, unfortunately, I'll have to leave it with that. Thank you so much for your presentation and this very interesting discussion.
Thank you, Ananya.